Hi, this is Tasheena.
And this is Jonathan.
And this is We Watch What We Watch, a podcast where a married couple come together to talk about movies and TV.
All right. And we are finishing our summer recap, which are movies we saw during the summer, not that came out in the summer necessarily.
They're all 2024 releases, Jonathan. And I think these three did come out in the summer.
All right, so...
He's been getting on my case about this. He said it's too confusing. I think it's not.
All right, well, before we get into it, do you have something you want to say to me?
Yes, I do, Jonathan. No, I have an announcement. We are switching gears. Next week, we're going to move to TV with Shogun. Now, Jonathan and I have watched this in the spring when it first came out. But there is so much going on in this series. I want to rewatch it again, and I want to dive deep. So I think how we're going to handle this, we're going to do 2 episodes of the show in one of our episodes.
Yeah.
So, like next week, we're going to do episode 1 and 2. We are not going to go beyond those episodes. So if you haven't seen it, don't worry. We're not going to spoil future episodes. So if you want to watch along with us, you can. Those spoilers will only be for the episodes we actually cover in that episode. Because we want to switch gears for later this year. We have a show we want to cover. I thought this would be a good practice for TV. Get our feet wet before we dive in November to a new show that's coming out.
All right, so our first movie is River. On a calm winter's day, a mountain inn becomes trapped in a time loop.
Yeah, okay.
Straight to the point. I like it.
Which is good because this movie is pretty simple in its premise. I would hope the summary would also be straightforward because this movie is about discovery. That's why I didn't want to go into spoilers. I think a lot of this movie is good on like a first-time experience, not knowing too much.
Right. Yeah, this almost immediately, this really reminded me of another Japanese movie, One Cut of the Dead. When I was watching it, that's all I could think of. Like, wow, this feels like One Cut of the Dead, which was another fantastic movie. But that's sort of like, it has this cute little engaging concept that you get right off the bat. Sort of low budget. You know, it's carried by the premise and the acting and the situation, seeing that unfold. I don't know what the relative budgets are for these, but it felt low budget. The filming, it felt like something that you would see at a film festival almost.
Yes. Yeah, it's low budget, but that doesn't mean it looks bad. You could tell there was restraints, but I think they did a good job going beyond their limitations.
It definitely helps them quite a bit that they have this amazing scenery to film in. Which just isn't fair.
Let's back up a sec. You could just get a very brief introduction. It's this little inn in Kyoto. There's a shrine up the hill, and there's a couple other buildings around it that you interact with, but nothing other than that. It doesn't really go too much beyond that. It's like a little street.
Yeah, this little picturesque small town in Japan in the mountains. With this river that flows through it. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, it was really beautiful. I thought it was a great location. And one of the characters there, I believe it's Mikoto, she works at the inn. So she goes to the river, she sits there for a second, and then she goes about her business for about 2 minutes. You know, she talks to one of the other workers, and then another male worker and her go and clean up a room where someone has, I think, eaten a meal. And then all of a sudden you hear this sound and it goes right back to where she was by the river 2 minutes ago.
Yep.
And that is the whole premise of the movie. Every 2 minutes, it goes back. It goes back, which I think is a very interesting concept. And I think they utilized it very well.
Yeah, you would think it would get exhausting. And I think what helps is it's not a Groundhog Day situation where only she knows. That obviously you would never get anything done. But the entire, I'll call it town, is in on it. Like everyone keeps their memories.
On this one street, because it's interesting, even though you fall from her perspective, because there's other people on the street that know what's going on, they are also having their own journeys of trying to like figure out what's going on. So she's able to gather information from other characters. Like one went down the street and was talking to different people during their couple minute span to see how far this went out. And they did hit a point where someone was like, well, what are you talking about? So they did realize it's contained. It is also interesting how quickly everybody got on board with this is what's happening, which I like.
Oh, I guess it's a time loop.
I hate when half a movie is just someone trying to convince.
You telling me this is some kind of time loop? It's like, yes, that's what it is.
Yeah. So for me, I'm just like, it was a breath of fresh air.
Not only were they on board with it, but also to varying degrees are somewhat unfazed. Like there's one person who kind of is freaking out at first and it's really blowing their mind. There's another character who like never catches on and is constantly thinking in linear terms, and they're always ragging on him.
I love the first few rounds. The hotel staff, they are professionals, and so their job is just to go to all their clients and go, this is what's happening, don't worry, whatever you need will be right here. Oh, if you need this, the next time the 2 minutes goes up, it's right here. You can go get it. Like, it was so professional. And in a Japanese setting.
It was so Japanese.
It made sense, too. Like, it was almost like a hyperbolic.
They're stuck in an insane sci-fi scenario, and their first reaction is, well, we have to take care of our guests. So first we got to do our jobs, and then we'll figure this out.
And panic does set in after a few rounds. I think when especially the exhaustion kicks in.
Sure.
Because to get anything done in those 2 minutes, like sometimes they're running because like if all of them want to meet in one place
in kimonos
and those
you really
shoes,
felt for them. Yeah.
Oh, those poor ladies. I was like, man, I've been throwing those shoes in the river every single day.
Yeah. First thing, chuck. But that's the thing is you never know. And it does tackle an interesting question of like, and they say at one point, don't do anything too crazy because since we don't know what's causing this, we don't know if it'll stop. And you don't want to do something that you'll then be stuck with. Maybe they really like their shoes. They didn't want to. They didn't want
to throw their shoes in the river.
Shoes.
No, those are my shoes for my job. I can't throw.
It's company property.
I like that the town, like it didn't reset in their mind. I like how the whole town was coming together to try to figure this out. And so even though there's a time loop, there is a linear progression, like an arc to the story. And also personal story, because Mikoto's dealing with her boyfriend wanting to leave for his culinary dreams. A part of her is like, well, this is nice. You don't have to go now. Personal reflection of how much we want time to stand still.
Yep.
But do we really? Then there is no forward progression. It was a little message I thought was nice. The ending was so super cute, low budget sci-fi that it fit perfectly. Like I think in any other movie, you'd be like, oh, that's so cheap. But for this movie,
it was pretty adorable.
It was pretty cute. I was laughing. It was a nice wrap up. I don't know. I really enjoyed this. Like what you said with One Cut of the Dead, I actually thought of that while I was watching the movie as well. Just something about the vibe of it and the feel of it was very similar, even though they're very different types of movies. And I think it's just, that low budget joy. You only have so much, you have so much limitations, but you work beyond that because you believe in this and you want to make a good product even if you have some limitations. And it sounds like the gentleman who directed this movie, Yamaguchi, he had actually another time loop movie before this, but it was super low budget. I'm interested to watch that other movie too. I heard it's cute as well.
What's interesting is that all that kind of reminds me of the Godzilla franchise too, which is obviously another very popular Japanese franchise. So I wonder, I haven't seen a lot of Japanese cinema, but I'm wondering if this is sort of almost feels like a theme at this point, this sort of, because obviously they'd probably be generally speaking lower budget. I don't know. It just feels like a theme in what limited Japanese cinema I have seen. Kind of feels like
like low budget kind of has this more of a vibe than like how low budget kind of has a certain vibe over in here.
Which I guess is probably true of any offshoot film industry and maybe a smaller country that doesn't have the resources, like you get these sort of more creative outputs because they gotta work with what they have, right? And they gotta find something to be novel.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this with Hundreds of Beavers. That was extremely low budget and was a joy to watch. Because when you are limited in money, all you really have are your creativity.
Yep.
To get past these problems. They had creativity and a great location.
Location.
And they were on their way to let people know there's a couple moments of darkness. For the most part, yes, it's pretty light. There's some serious moments. And then there's one moment, one little section. Like, I feel like there's 5 minutes of this movie that goes super dark. And you're just like, oh my gosh, where did that come from? I thought it fit.
Dealing with some of the actual consequences you might expect. Because you're going along with it. And it's all kind of in good fun.
Mm-hmm.
And even the characters start to feel like, oh yeah, this is good fun. And then you realize that it might not be for everyone.
the two leads being a little selfish in one section, and more, the consequences of their selfishness.
Yeah.
And you understand where they're coming from, but it's definitely a sobering moment.
Yeah. But not in a way that, thankfully, because of the looping nature, it's not in a way that scars them. But it just...
Oh, no, that's probably pretty scarring.
It's scarring, but it's not like it wasn't an irredeemable moment, because even though there are consequences, they are not permanent. Because their decisions, if it was a different kind of a movie, would have made them hard to root for.
Yes.
But because you get to see their own reflection and learning, they have their arcs. Because of that, they're able to redeem themselves, to see what they're doing and correct it.
Exactly. Because, they as soon as that happens, they snap out of their bubble.
Yep.
And they're like, no, we need to stop being selfish. So, I would highly recommend this movie. It is on Amazon Prime, but they have this weird thing that as you're watching it, the subtitles slowly get off track. And I guess there is a fix, but we
didn't want to deal with it. So we swapped to Tubi.
Because we only had a half an hour left, and I'm like, I don't want to deal with that. So we switched to Tubi.
In that half an hour, we had about 30 ad breaks.
Which, if you don't mind ad breaks, I do like Tubi. They have a lot of good free stuff, but you do have to deal with ads. So it's on both those platforms. It's only like an hour and a half. I think even less than an hour and a half. So short, sweet, simple. If you're a sci-fi fan, go for it.
Yep.
All right. Any last thoughts before we move on?
No. Cute movie, cute concept, well executed.
All right.
Movie number 2, 2024, Oddity. Psychic medium attempts to uncover the truth behind her sister's murder at the site of the crime.
Wow. All these summaries are so short and sweet. I kind of like it. I think it's how we should do it. Like trailers.
Short and sweet.
Trailers need to stop being like 30 minutes long. Oddity is a Irish movie. It's a horror movie. And it came out recently. And I heard a lot of good things about it. But because how horror has been going this year for me, I'm just like, I don't know.
Yep.
And then I think I was sick the lonely week it was in theaters. So I'm kind of glad I waited to watch this at home because I actually had a really good experience. It was a good time. I would akin this to that Gordon Ramsay meme where he goes, finally some good fucking food. And that's how I felt. It just had a lot of those classic vibes and moments that I want from horror. And it didn't pretend to be something it wasn't. Like, there's some serious stuff going on in the movie, but it's not trying to be like the super allegory metaphor for generational trauma or grief, and then here's all these questions and we're going to give you no answers, which is fine if it's done well. But a lot of the horror movies this year, they think they're deep and they're not really. Especially, I saw someone did a review on Longlegs and they're like, I don't know, it just seems like horror movies this year are not actually speaking to modern day horror. Because they just present something and it's like, and what? So Oddity was a great time. I highly recommend it. Even the cold open alone got to me. You know, it's a good movie when I'm sitting on the couch, I have my blanket, and it's up here, and I'm just like, ah! And it had haunted house, ghost, mediums, and the craziest thing of all I've seen this year, Woodman, which I will go into
Woodman?
later. I will go into later. So the cold opening, this house is very interesting. I was trying to explain it to Jonathan earlier because I'm like, what do you call this house? It is a square, and then there's a square courtyard in the middle. So it almost looks like something that would go around a castle. Because it's thin. Not even like it's a huge house. It's just deceptive because of this huge courtyard in the middle.
Yeah, and she was asking me, is there a name for this house? I'm like, oh yeah, it's probably some French name or Spanish name or Arabic name. Look it up. Courtyard house. That's it. I'm like, oh, I should have figured.
Because I've seen them in movies like in Italy. So I'm like, oh, I guess this is just a old European style house. Because this is in Ireland.
Yeah, they're kind of everywhere in different. They show up in
Morocco was the most popular?
Morocco's big, yeah, but they've been in the British Isles and elsewhere. It's sort of all over the place. But yeah, I think Morocco is still a huge part of their architecture.
So anywho.
Anyway, enough about courtyard houses.
Well, I'm explaining this because I love haunted houses, love spooky movies, and it was neat to see a different style of house. Because, you know, usually it's your classic Gothic type castle.
Big Victorian home.
Exactly. I had a really good time with it. So yeah, the sister, that's reference. The cold opening is her. Of course, she got this house. She's doing her remodel. I'm just like, sell it, baby. And as she's doing that, she can't find her phone. So she goes out to her car, which is in that little courtyard area. She goes back into the house, closes the door. There's a knock. She opens the little, there's a slide thing that's the peephole. It kind of looks like a speakeasy.
Right.
Opens it up, backs up, and there's this dude there with the strangest glass I've ever seen. I'm like, oh, dude, that was a choice. It was like mostly white, but it was like outlined in black. And he's just like gnarly looking. Hasn't taken a shower in a while. And he's like, someone is in your house. When you were going out to your car, I saw someone go into your house. And of course, because it's being renovated, she only has like a couple of lamps, so like tons of shadows and darkness is around her. And she's just looking around going, and he's like, you need to let me inside. I need to try to find this person. And of course, what do you do? And I'm like, oh no, I was just thinking I'd be dead either way. I'd definitely make the wrong choice and I would be dead. And
to that point that you let him in, then run out yourself and just leave.
Just run.
Give the house to the squatters, write it off.
Exactly.
It's done.
Of course, at first she's like, no, I'm not letting you in my house. What are you, crazy? She's like, my husband's gonna come home. And he's like, Dr. Timms does the night shift. And she's like, how do you know that? And he's like, that's why I'm here. I came to see him because he must have been in the courtyard to see her go out to her car and come back in to see this person. So he was definitely watching from the courtyard. So it's not like he was just like walking up. And he goes, you have to trust me. There's someone in the house. He goes, I'm gonna call the police. He goes, I think this is when it turns for her because she thinks that's gonna scare him off. But he goes, good. Get your phone. Call the police. That's what you need to do. And then she's like, oh shit, that's why I went out to the car. I can't find my phone.
Oh no.
And so
what if he knew that though?
I know. She's just like, but the way he's coming off so frantic, it does make it believable that he actually thinks like there's someone there. And she just keeps looking off, especially to this one little hallway to the side. She slowly walks up to the door. She fits her hand on the door and then it cuts. And that's the cold open.
Oh my God.
I was just like, ah!
That's a good opening.
That was a great opening. And honestly, I think the rest of the movie is solid. Like it falls through. There's a lot of spookiness that I liked because her sister, her identical twin sister, is the blind medium. And so she comes back to the house a year later to try to figure out what happened. Because, of course, her sister dies And it is assumed that the gentleman who was at the door, Olin, was the one who killed her because he is from the psych hospital the husband works at, and he was just released.
Oh.
He dies in the psych ward, and the husband gives the twin sister the glass eye because part of her powers is she has to have a physical object that they touch, like wedding rings, any of that. That's what keys her in to memories, feelings, all that. So she gets the glass eye, and you don't see what she sees. She just holds it, and then on the year anniversary of her sister's death, she just pops on over to the house and like, hi, I'm here to stay. You said I could come for her anniversary. No notice, no nothing. And she sends a box with her ahead of her. And so it's the husband who's moved into the house. Like after his wife passed away, I guess he finished renovations, at least on that section of the house. And his new girlfriend is living there. And she's like a pharmaceutical rep. And so pretty much the rest of the movie is what's in that box, what the sister knows, and it just goes from there. Now, I will say, I think there's a twist. It's obvious to me, but I don't think that took away anything from me because I think there's still enough happening. And even when that was revealed, it's not like it didn't hinge on everything, this reveal. It's a standard in horror. I don't know. I was not surprised at all. There was one element that was interesting, but the ending is so good. So in this box, the sister works at a shop that they got from the mom called Odell's Oddities. So she sells trinkets and stuff like that. And then in her back room is like the special stuff that I'm guessing is imbued with magic. So like I said, she sends this box ahead of her. And at first, you just see the husband and his new girlfriend. They open up the box and they're just looking inside. The fuck is this? And I'm going to show Jonathan what this looks like.
What the fuck? What the fuck is that?
This is Woodman.
Don't put your dick in that.
He's saying that because our Woodman gentleman has his mouth open like a scream.
Looks like a popcorn bucket.
Yes, actually it does.
The Deadpool and Wolverine popcorn bucket.
So yeah,
They missed an opportunity for another popcorn bucket for this one. The Woodman popcorn bucket.
No! Don't learn much about it. They just set it at the table. They don't. They actually look away and I think they assume she took it out of the box and put it at the table because they come back into the room and it's just there at the head of the table. There's one time where the girlfriend is upstairs, like kind of looking down at the table, and she's talking to the husband about this freaky thing and this freaky sister. She looks down and Woodman is just looking up at her and she drops her phone and breaks it. Jeez. Like it's perfect. It's just this super creepy thing that's just lingering there. Jeez. Just stuff like that. It was a lot of great moments and build up. Because like I said, the story's pretty simple. It's not like there's huge surprises in that sense. But when Woodman takes action, it is scariest thing. I loved it. I was freaking out. It's like a zombie where it's like the slowest walk ever. And I'm still freaking out. Like, run away! Run away! I think you can have horror movies have messages. But there's so many people, filmmakers that are trying to do that they're missing out on the fun. Like, this movie doesn't take itself too seriously. It's scary, and I laughed a few times, and it was just a great viewing experience. I had a lot of fun just watching it in our house with all the lights off and my blanket. I would highly recommend it. I think especially if you've been a little meh on horror this year, I would definitely give this one a try, especially the spooky vibes. I just love spooky vibes. The Woodman was unique. Just a lot of good stuff. And also an ending that surprising, but it was fun.
All right. So our final movie is Evil Does Not Exist. Takumi and his daughter Hana live in, Mizubiki? They live in the village close to Tokyo One day, the village inhabitants become aware of a plan to build a camping site near Takumi's house, offering residents a comfortable escape to nature. That summary really undersells it.
That's
All right.
definitely what happens. It is
That
the
is-
basic bare bones.
Yeah, reads like a Wikipedia page.
Yeah, it's hard to summarize this because
It
a
is.
lot of it is mood.
Yes. So we start out, so this is an interesting one. We start out with just some very quiet, like slice of life shots of Takumi as he goes about his daily tasks. He's in this rural village in the mountains. It was interesting how much it reminded me of like rural towns here in North America.
Mm-hmm.
Similar vibes, which I guess is true. The closer you get to living off what's around you, the more similar things get. But also just it's in winter, which is fantastic.
Yes.
You just get some really slow, quiet nature ASMR shots.
Yes.
Of just the landscape and flowing water, and he's chopping wood and doing all these other things. And it's really, really peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, really sets the stage for because I feel like what you really want to do is completely bring you into not only like who are these people, but what are their lives like? What's it like to live here specifically? Because that is key
So what's at stake?
to the movie.
Yeah. So you need to have an understanding. It's interesting because you're correct in that portion, but before we even get there, it's 4 minutes of a slow shot of looking up into the trees while the music that's going on is peaceful, but it's also sad. There's an undertone of something tragic. It really got to me, the music in the beginning. Like my heart was hurting a bit. It reminded me of the beginning of Arrival, like the music in that. There's a lot of depth here. And I think that beginning is kind of keying you in because I think other filmmakers, if you saw this, you're like, well, this is boring. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I've seen a couple of his other movies, so I knew. I'm like, he knows what he is doing. Be patient. He is showing you these things for a reason. This is not just him like wasting time in the woods.
Yeah.
Like all of these are important. And what's interesting, all the things in the beginning are paralleled at the end. Because they do pretty much the same thing. The wood, collecting the water, his daughter, like picking her up. All those things, even hearing the gunshot, all those things are paralleled at the end. So it's interesting seeing it here and seeing it there where it's not so peaceful at the end.
Yeah, I was really vibing with this movie in the beginning. I'm definitely a fall winter guy. I love hiking out in the woods in the fall, and this was just like nirvana. Felt like sometimes I'll play nature sounds when I'm trying to sleep, like rushing water and stuff, and it felt like I'm like,
That's so nice.
I could have definitely fallen asleep, not out of boredom, but just out of like
Yeah, the
tranquility.
peace.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it was all about peace. And then
So-
the peace is disrupted, but in an atypical way.
Yes. It's so interesting the way modernity and the city are kind of represented in this movie and how disruptive it is and ugly. And not that I think the director's like anti-city, but
Right.
from the perspective of this movie, what nature is and what it's saying, it is about the encroachment of this futurism, like coming in to destroy nature in a way, like with the glamping site.
Yeah.
Ugh.
So after this big tranquil opening and we see them go through all these things, we basically, okay, here's the town, here's what's at stake. Then suddenly this corporation comes in and they do this presentation of the town. Basically like, we already bought this land and we're going to build a glamping site right in your town, right on the outskirts or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And here's our presentation, blah, 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 blah.
Because that's
Do you have any
purposeful.
questions?
Yeah.
And they basically just eviscerate them in a great way, like a really,
yes.
they have
It's not mean.
They have all 100% reasonable questions. How are you going to handle this? Do you realize the impact this is going to have? In a very polite Japanese way, being like,
Yeah.
this is going to destroy the town
Yes.
in
It
ways you
is.
don't realize.
So this town meeting is 20 minutes of the movie, and it is so riveting. It is one of best constructed scenes I've seen. And it's literally just a town meeting where these locals are just bringing up problems with this glamping site. And it's just, you can tell how little thought was put in to the site.
Yeah.
The project is being built by a talent agency.
I wasn't really sure in some of the logistical details because it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but I think effectively, yeah, the point was that it's some company that has no business doing this.
No.
That is trying to do some sort of project to take advantage of COVID-era subsidies that the government will give them just for attempting a project like this.
This is really good. This subsidies thing. Because, yeah, it's like, oh, and that's why they have to do it so quickly because
there's a deadline. Yeah.
Yes, there's a deadline for this money because the people that were at the meeting even asked, I guess, the head of this project, like, why don't we just move it down a few months, address these concerns, which are legitimate concerns? And they're like, nope, we can't do that. We have to get going in like a month because we have to get this money. Because if they don't, then there is no point to doing this. It's a cash grab.
Yeah. And they say as much during the meeting, like the townspeople are calling, like, there's this one sort of smart ass, like, younger kid, he's like, I bet it's just for the subsidies. And you sort of like, at this point, you're like, okay, it could be, but obviously that's, what someone would say. And then you're right, later on in the meeting, they basically like, we have to start because of the subsidies.
So he was right. He might have been a smart ass, but he was right.
So right off the bat, you get these two great scenes of like the establishing shot of the nature and the town and their lives and what it means and what it looks like. And then this town hall, which really makes you want to get involved in local government because it's just like, yeah, this is...
Not here. No. The town halls do not go like that here. I saw some during COVID times.
It gives you this idea of what that kind of thing should be. It's like...
Yes.
I guess I'm having trouble explaining it, but it was just great seeing like these townspeople. They weren't idiots. Which is sort of what the city people assume. These are country bumpkins.
Exactly.
Right? Like,
they're going to come in. Yeah, they might have a few questions, but we could easily
brush
them because they're actors. The main guy doing this was an actor. So they probably thought he would put on the charm, whatever concerns they had.
Right.
They'd brush it aside, maybe give them a couple of things like, and do we'll throw this up the chain. We'll give it to this person. And of course, you hear that and you're like, ain't nobody gonna hear this concern.
Nope. It was great to say they get completely eviscerated and they're so out of their element and so surprised at how the townspeople just really hit the nail on the head in terms of these are our concerns and this is what has to be done. And all of them are correct.
Yes, because that's also a viewpoint here in America where city people tend to think rural people are idiots. Mm-hmm. And that's not the case.
Yeah, they know their communities.
Yeah, they're just different. They have different concerns.
Right. After that, then we get into, the aftermath and how this corporation is going to regroup and come at it again.
It's interesting, the two representatives that were there, how this meeting affected them. Like the lady, you could tell she was really put off by what would happen and also the response when she came back. Because she was the one who mentioned, why don't we just push this back? Why don't we fix these things? Like, she actually seemed concerned, which I liked because I feel like in these like big corporations coming in, it makes like all the corporate people look like bad guys. Some of them, a lot of it's just ignorance. They think there's going to be no impact. Oh, why don't we just do this? Like, it's not going to be no big deal.
In keeping with the title of the movie, evil does not exist. It's like, these are not...
It's mainly ignorance, yes.
Yeah.
Or ignorance because of money, because they don't care.
Probably the CEO,
like the higher ups.
The CEO is probably the closest you'd get to like someone who might actually be evil. But even he is just like... He is in his own world.
Yes.
And doing his thing based on his needs. And the corporate are stuck in the middle. And even the guy, one of the first things he says after this disastrous meeting where they sort of get whipped and then he goes back, one of the first things he says to the CEO is, this project is full of holes. So it's like, they get it. Mm-hmm. They know it's kind of rubbish. But they get brushed aside.
Yes, because I think that happens a lot with like middle management, where it can be nebulous, where some of them, definitely could be jerks. Some of them could be good people that are just misled or ignorant. Like, there's a variety of reasons why people might think this is a good idea and not know the damage it could do. Because honestly, with the sewage concerns that the citizens brought up, the rep said, oh, well, that's fine. That's in the allotted amount that's allowed, correct? Did I hear that right?
Right. The
Which I'm just like,
margin of error or whatever, the acceptable levels of...
I'm like, oh, that's nice to know that we're in the acceptable levels of poop in our water.
Which is interesting, and I think there are very few people in this who are just actively wrong. And, in a way, they are right. There is a scientific acceptable level of, say, fecal matter that can be in your water supply and be fine. Which is a very city attitude to have, because their water probably is full of shit.
It's probably at the max level, man.
But it was their inability to recognize that their standards that apply to them in a city context mean completely different things when you're talking about a town.
Yes.
That is literally built upon the fact that it has clean, fresh spring water, or it's a completely different thing. Mm-hmm. There is no acceptable levels of human waste in their water.
Exactly. Like the lady who has the restaurant. And she's like, I came here because of the water. Like, I couldn't do what I do in the city with that water. I came here and used the water here to make my noodles. And that's why they're so dang good. So if you put poop in this water, I can't use it to make
Please
my
don't
noodles.
Poop in my water. The movie.
I mean, pretty much. That's like, there's other concerns, but I feel like that was definitely like the major one, which honestly, I'm with them. And it sounded like if it was just moved into a different area, it might help, because it sounded like where it was would definitely drain into the water, because I think Takumi even mentioned, like, well, what if we put it on the other side? That'd probably help. So it's not like it's not even like the townspeople are trying to be completely unreasonable. They just want to know that these concerns are being addressed, because this glamping site affects them. And all the reasons that they give, and I hear this all the time from tourist companies of like, oh, it'll bring tourists in to your shops and to your restaurants. And I'm like, I don't know if that's enough to counterbalance the damage that's done.
Right.
And even the restaurant lady's like, but you're offering food at your glamping site, so I'm not even going to see that much.
To go into town.
So we're actually not going to get that much in terms of tourism, because it's supposed to be kind of, like a camping exclusive type thing. And there are other things like especially our big motif, it is the deer.
Right.
The deer is important here because the deer live on this mountain. And where they want to place this glamping site is on a deer trail. Mm-hmm. And so there is a pivotal discussion that has happened in the car, because the reps come back. The two reps that were at the town meeting, they are told by the CEO, give this guy some alcohol and tell him he can be the caretaker at the night, and give him this position, and that should be enough. That should be enough to like cover up some of their concerns. Like, it's just so dismissive.
Right.
So they come back with the alcohol, and Takumi's like, I don't drink alcohol. And they're like, They offer him the position, and you could just see right through it. Like, he's not a dummy. They're in the car, and so they bring up the situation with the glamping site being on this trail. And, like, well, we could put a fence around it. And he's like, deer jump really high. Are you going to put a really high fence up? Just some of these concerns. And then they talk about gunshot deer, because that is the only time that deer attack humans, is when they are shot or when their baby is shot and they're protecting them.
And early on in the movie, we hear a gunshot.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about how, there's hunters nearby, and
you even see a dead deer.
They see a dead deer, and they talk about how
it was a gunshot.
The deer was shot, and that's how it died.
So it's definitely,
that's already in your mind.
Yes, it is a theme throughout. It is, this gunshot deer is pivotal to all the themes of the story. There's just this one line, because, they're kind of coming to an impasse of what to do about the deer. The lady rep goes, oh, why don't we just, like, they go away or move them. I don't know.
I think they were talking about the fence, and they're like, well, you have to build a really high fence. So when your guest's not like that, and they're like, well, you said they stay away from humans, right? So maybe they'll just stay away from the camp because there's humans there. And then your son's like, where would they go? And she's just like, I guess they'll go somewhere else.
And that's the line that got to me. The way he said it to her, like, where do they go? It was definitely another layer of like the townspeople.
Yep. What do we do? I guess you do something else. Like that sort of dismissive attitude. Yeah.
Because the deer definitely in place of Tacome, his daughter Hannah, who's 8 years old, and the townsfolk. They're not asking for much.
A path.
Yeah.
They want their deer path.
They want their water.
They want their water.
Like, it's so simple. And then they're being dismissed and not heard. It's so frustrating because I know, like, you actually don't see what happens with the glamping site. But you just kind of know how it's going to go.
Just like with the deer, ultimately, the deer can lash out. Mm-hmm. But they are ultimately powerless against the hunters who have all the advantages and will just do what they are going to do.
We've talked about most of the movie, but there's definitely...
And I think also they keep mentioning specifically like a gut shot deer, which I think is a distinction because I'm assuming, not being a hunter, but I'm assuming the point of hunting a deer is that you shoot it, like, say, in the head and you kill it instantly.
Yes. I would
but I imagine
so.
If you miss and end up hitting in the gut, now, it's going to die slower, more agonizing. Yeah. That's when it's dangerous and can lash out. So they make this thing that's a gut shot deer, one that did not die immediately like it was supposed to.
So yeah, they keep hearing these gunshots off in the distance. So it's also another way of like modernity, like it encroaching in, like something. They are the deer. These deer are getting shot and then cruelly just walking around, slowly dying. It's really awful. Is there anything we want to mention before we go into the spoilers? Because most of the movie we could talk about, but it's like the last 10 to 15 minutes.
Right, yeah, it
changes.
I think the only thing to talk about is like recommendations. So I think before we get into spoilers, I would recommend it. You have to know what to be prepared for, which is like that very slow opening, very much vibes and immersing yourself in what the director is trying to show you. So just go in with that expectation. If you're someone who says boring and falls asleep, you might have a problem with it. So maybe set yourself up for that. But if you want to see some beautiful locales, with this great atmosphere and a very compelling story, some great dialogue scenes, especially the townspeople, I'd recommend it.
Oh yeah, I highly recommend this movie. I loved it a lot.
All right.
I wasn't done. I took a moment to think, and Jonathan's like, "Couldn't do. Move it. Need to embrace the slow, peaceful life, Jonathan. We're not in a rush all the time.
Embrace the zen."
Because I mentioned earlier with Oddity of people making movies thinking they have this profound message, and it's not really. This is a movie that has strong themes. People are calling it an eco-parable, and I think that fits.
Okay, yeah.
But I don't feel like to the point where it's like hitting you over the head. It's just presenting something to you about nature, how we as humans are in nature, how we affect it. Just a lot of questions, especially today. Like, this is a today message with climate change, with the cities encroaching on natural land. So it brings up a lot of questions that I think got to me because not only that they're questions for now, but I think also questions for the future.
Yeah. Real questions that you can go out and get answers to.
Maybe not. Maybe you have to there's some things in here you really have to wrestle with.
Maybe not, but the journey is worth it. It's questions that are worth attempting to answer even if you can't find an answer. As opposed to questions for the sake of questions or other stuff.
And you're like,
Just ask questions. I get asked questions, but just because something asks something doesn't mean it's worth thinking about.
I think it's a very thoughtful movie from someone who had a clear direction. Like, this is expertly handled from the director. So, yeah, I highly recommend this. You ready?
All right, so spoilers.
You want to go into What happens at the end?
Yeah, so basically, so they make this pitch to them about you should be the caretaker. And he's just sort of like, meh. And he's sitting there cutting wood, and the guy is like, hey, can I try that? And so he tries to cut the wood, and he basically fails miserably. And the townsman gives him some pointers, and then he's able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, wow, that felt really good. Like it activates some sort of, primal instinct,
Beast mode.
And now he suddenly pivots, and he's like, you teach me how to be the caretaker. I'll be the caretaker. After chopping one log of wood, he's like, I'm going to be the caretaker.
It's the whole thing of city folk using the real lives of people out in, rural communities. For them, it's a fantasy.
Right.
But it's their real life. It's not just some nice little costume you can put on, and I can be the woodsy man that goes out and chops wood and be a man of the land. Because that's definitely how he was taking it.
Right.
Like, that's the vibe I got. Part of me was wondering if he was also, because his acting background, was he trying to punch it up to get on this guy's good side as well?
Maybe a little bit. I'll assume for now that he was genuine. It was a genuine interest, at least to his own. So after that, they tag along with him for the rest of the day, doing some of the stuff he does. One very important point earlier in the movie, which we didn't talk about because it probably spoils it too much, even though it's not a spoiler because it happens early in the movie. If we talked about it, would have highlighted it and would have probably spoiled it because you would have guessed. So he's very forgetful, Takumi is. And he has to pick his daughter up from school and frequently forgets. And when he forgets, she walks home through like a large expanse of woods.
Which
is insane.
A mom of a girl around the same age, I was like,
but also time. That's us in our suburban mindset. Like, we wouldn't
it seemed like it was not a real too big of a deal. Because like the teacher's like, oh, yeah, she walked home. And I'm like, what?
Got to do what you got to do. And you're right. It is mostly uninhabited wilderness. So it is safe.
Yeah.
So anyway, so she walks home earlier in the movie. And at this point, when he's out with these city people, he realizes he has forgot again to pick her up. He goes to pick her up. She's already left. And they go looking for her in the woods, but they can't find her. And then they start the whole town gathers up in a search, and they're looking and looking and looking. This really started to get to me, obviously, especially now that we have
very hard to watch.
A daughter. Now, what's interesting is when this movie starts and you see the girl walking around, I immediately looked up the movie to see if she died. Because I'm like, I can't handle it. I'm not going to watch this if she dies. But here's the thing. I missed it. The summary I saw did not mention it.
What?
Because I looked at a quick thing that summarized, maybe like, intense scenes or whatever. It didn't mention it. So I'm like, okay, good. She's fine.
Well, the whole time I'm just like, something bad's going to happen to that girl.
Yeah.
So, like, you just...
But now, as soon as she then gets lost, then I'm like, God damn it! It fucking lied to me.
Wikipedia. No!
But so now I'm just like getting more and more anxious.
I'm so sorry, Jonathan. I understand. I was very anxious too because I'm just like, no.
And throughout this whole search, the actor city guy continues to tag along with Takumi.
The lady rep gets a deep cut, so she actually stays behind at the house, and they wrapped her in.
And she says that she'll call them if the girl happens to show up at the house, which is smart.
Yes.
And the guy tags along with him. Long story short, what ends up happening is it's just the two of them together alone now at this point in the search. It's been overnight at this point. I think it's early morning now.
That's what it looked like.
Yeah, so it's bad.
Yeah.
And they crest a hill, and they see her dead. And the way it's presented is you actually don't see her dead at first. They crest the hill and they show her. You see them looking at something, and then there's some disagreement with people about what is being represented here. But the way I'm seeing it is you're seeing what Takumi is reconstructing in his mind about what happened.
Because he knows.
Because you see her alive at first, face to face with a deer who has been shot, and I think there's a baby deer next to them.
There's a baby deer next to them. Because you see two.
And you pause on that for a bit, and then suddenly you see her there, and she's dead. So I'm assuming that you're seeing like either him reconstructing or just for the audience benefit, calling back to that conversation they had earlier about the gut-shot deer and when they will harm a human. And so you put two and two together, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, seeing her body there, the city guy starts to go towards her, and Takumi grabs him and strangles him to death.
Like choke hold him. And first, I was like, I didn't know if he died, but he's like foaming at the mouth. He gets up for a second and then he collapses. And I'm like, oh, I'm pretty sure, that he has died.
So then Takumi goes, picks up his daughter and sort of, takes her and runs off. And
you get the same shot of the woods from the very beginning where you're looking up to the trees, but now it's darker.
And you're just hearing his breath.
Is he carrying her?
Yeah. And that's where the movie ends.
Ugh.
So this ending is very controversial, mostly among people who take things way too literally. And I'll admit, I'm a bit mixed on it. So I get... Well, first, do you want to comment on any of this since I've been summarizing for a while?
Oh, man. Where do I even start? I was so taken aback because, 90 to 95% of the movie is just so chill.
Mm-hmm.
There's serious problems going on. I was not expecting this. When the daughter goes missing, that last 5%, everything changes. And as I did research, because I was unsure about the ending, I definitely thought it fit. And doing more research, I've come to like it more, especially hearing the director's viewpoint. The
parallels here are pretty obvious with effectively Takumi is now the gut shot deer.
Yes.
He has been shot through the heart.
Yeah.
With his daughter has died.
Because it's alluded to in the beginning, you see a picture of him, his daughter, and what I presume is Hannah's mom.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pretty sure he is a widower.
Yeah.
So it's and I'm guessing it was pretty recent from the pictures. Oh, he's now lost
right, because she's not much older. She's maybe 8 or 9, I think.
Yeah. So he lost his wife and now he's lost his daughter. And part of it's a little on him because he forgot about her.
Yep.
I also like that aspect of him because he's not a perfect person, because I was afraid they were going to go into the rural people are perfect and individuals, and they're not. They're just people living their lives. And here's something where, he's a little bit emotionally distant. He does love his daughter a lot. He's just forgetful sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
We saw this again. The whole beginning is paralleled in the end.
Right. And that's the thing is the point you bring up about there's people living their lives. That is basically the point of the entire movie is evil does not exist. No one here is inherently evil. They are all living their lives, but their lives have impacts on each other.
Yes.
And therefore, which is why it sort of makes sense, as you said, as this eco-parable, because it's we have to be aware of how our lives have these consequences. And the main thing here is that guy did not deserve to die, which is true. And yet he does. I think there are 2 bad takes on this movie. And one of them is this movie's stupid because none of this makes any sense. Because why would he do that? Which is true. I think in a real life scenario, this wouldn't happen. I think you cannot look at this as a straight literal telling of a practical story. I think looking at it as a parable makes it really connect much more. Also just makes it more interesting.
Because in that moment, he's rejecting everything this representative has represented with a glamping site, majority, being the caretaker. I don't know. I feel it's also part of it.
I think that's valid. I don't think that's necessarily even it.
Okay.
Because I think the other bad take, which isn't what you're saying, but the other bad take that I've seen is, no, man, this city guy was just such a fake the whole time, and he deserved to die. What? So I think both of these are equally bad.
No.
And I think you can look at it as, in this moment, he's rejecting everything this city guy stands for. But I think it's much simpler than that, because then that implies that the girl's death at the hands of the deer is somehow the deer had no vendetta against her.
Oh, no. I think that's the difference between humans and animals.
See, that's where I disagree. I think the point of this is that they're the same. I think he died because he was there.
I do believe that. I do think, thankfully, the lady was not there.
And I think if he hadn't rushed forward, I think that's where he made him. I think the only mistake he made was rushing forward towards the daughter's body. Then Takumi is just reacting given everything in given his life experience so far, everything he's going through in this moment, he just reacts. Because he is the gutshot deer. That deer reacts to the daughter. I don't think, again, if we just look at this in the frame of the daughter and the deer.
Yes.
Deer and daughter have nothing against each other.
No.
There's no reason for them to harm each other. They both represent a certain level of innocence.
Yes.
Right? They're both these innocent lives. And yet one of them is hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's probably implied that she maybe approached the deer.
In the reconstruction, it looks like she takes off her hat and she goes up to the deer.
So she makes a move that
Towards
is just, unfortunately, because it's a hurt wild animal, she makes a move that it then reacts to and harms her. And I think that's very important.
Mm-hmm.
I think then when you apply that to the two men,
yes,
it's not that they're both standing there and then he just turns and I reject everything he's
Terminator mode, yeah.
And I think that was very, very intentional.
Oh, yes.
That he doesn't just turn and kill him.
Yes. They're
standing there. Takumi has now been shot.
Yeah.
And then the guy, because of everything his life is built up to, where he's all, I'm going to be the caretaker. Oh, I'm in with Takumi now. I'm in with these people. I'm one of them. I see this girl. I'm going to go help. It's like, no, dude. He should. The problem was he was incapable in that moment of understanding the right decision, which was to not approach. He should not have. He should not have moved.
He should have just.
It was that because he goes for it. He bolts, and I think Takumi is just reacting to that. And you're right in that his rejection of modernity and the city and all this stuff that's affecting their lives.
I just think it's another layer. Yeah.
I just wouldn't agree with
I don't think
I am taking an action to reject.
I don't think that was in his mind. Yeah. I just think that's another layer.
I just think it's literally he was hurt in this moment. I think the point of it was that that's how you're supposed to read it. Yes. Are much more similar than we might think.
Mm-hmm.
That deer are not evil. Neither are humans. In this context anyway. Don't come at me about all the examples of why humans are evil. I get it, and I agree.
Yes.
But let's just examine the context of the story. In the context of this story, neither one of them's evil. They're just sharing a world. They've had things happen to them, and they are reacting. And it is important to understand the consequences of your actions and to know when to back down and how to respect life in all forms, human or animal, around you.
Okay.
And I think most of the bad takes I've seen from really come from people who don't understand that. Especially, I hate these literalists who are just looking at purely as a...
Oh, I cannot stand that.
It's like, yes, I get it. There are plenty of missing persons searches where the parents don't find their kids dead and just murder some random person. I get that. But in the context of this story, you have to see what's going on and understand the message. And I really think that if you're still struggling, I think what you said was perfect. It looking at it as this eco parable is the key to putting yourself in the right frame of mind to accept the message it's trying to say.
A lot of this movie revolves around nature and how we interact with it. But nature doesn't have morality like we do.
Right.
Part of that comes from having foresight in how our actions interact with other people. We can be like, oh, this will hurt that person or this will help that person. Like you said, a deer's not going to think like, oh, if I hurt this daughter, it's going to hurt her dad. It's interesting. We care a lot about morality, which we should. I'm not going for anti-morality here. But nature does not care about our morality. Because there's a reason why he chose this title. He's a thoughtful director.
Right.
He didn't just pick it because it sounded cool. Because a lot of people are like, well, what does that mean? It didn't have anything to do with the movie. And I'm just like, did we watch the same movie? But I think in terms of... I think I broke Jonathan with that.
All right, yeah, go ahead.
But this movie is all about our morality. But does our morality impact nature? Because nature doesn't care about evil. It's just all these are questions that I think are valid questions when we think about how to take care of the earth. Because even the villagers aren't perfect because they said their grandfathers came there to that village and I think they did a lot of destruction to the mountain when they got there. Part of them, the reason why they're doing what they're doing to take care is because they saw the damage that the older generation did to the mountain.
Yeah, their own generation. They understand the problem better than anybody.
Because I think it was the leader, right? Their pretty much their chief leader was part of that, and so they're very mindful of like balance. How not really morality, but how that balance can affect not only nature but humans.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at nature more in the terms of balance is probably more helpful than, oh, what you're doing is evil. I think we are doing some things that are bad, but that's because it throws balance off and we are harming things.
Yep.
And the glamping site, they think they're doing all the things necessary to keep that balance in place. Like, oh, it's not going to hurt you and it's going to bring good things. But they're not. They're actually throwing off the balance.
Right.
I really like the ending. I can see why maybe some people were put off by it. I think especially with the parallel of the gunshot deer. Having that in, the parallels of everything from the beginning to the end. Like I said, this is a director, Amaguchi. He did Drive My Car, which was really good. I saw it last year. He's churning these movies out, and it is crazy because the craft involved in this movie, I can't believe he did those two movies back to back. It's pretty crazy. This was successful because he had such a strong hand. He knew exactly what he wanted to accomplish, and I think he did that. Yep.
Yeah, definitely. One other thing that's really reminded, especially the city people and how they interact with nature, is like the tourists who go to a national park like Yellowstone or something and just go up and interact with wildlife as if it's there for their social media clout. You know, that sort of disrespect of what nature is, what it's there for, and the arrogance that it's there to like serve your purposes is at the forefront of this movie.
Because sadly, that is an idea that is pushed forward in Genesis, in the Bible. Like, we are kings. We have domain over this earth.
Right.
And I think that's a poor way of looking at how we need to interact with nature. We should be caretakers that are helping to keep balance. We are not over nature. We're not in control of it. I mean, we've seen how powerful nature is. I'm pretty sure nature is probably way more in dominion than we are.
Right.
Oh man, talk about Yellowstone. I loved going to Yellowstone so much. It is so beautiful. It was one of the best experiences of my life. But yeah, seeing the stupid people, how they interact with nature is infuriating, especially seeing like plastic water bottles sometimes and like hot springs and man, if it wouldn't burn me up to a million pieces, I'd be going to clean it. It made me so mad. I'm just like, I don't know, just to see something so beautiful, your idea is just to chuck a plastic bottle somewhere.
Right.
So yeah. That's also why I want to do 3 movies, because I knew we were going to talk a lot about this movie.
I don't think we would have had time.
So it was like too many reviews and a regular review.
After all, we do what we want and we watch what we watch.
That is the name of the game here.
All right. Any closing thoughts?
Go see it. I mean, unless you have the attention span of a gnat. But if you can sit still, it is worth it. It's okay if some movies are slow. It's not slow because the direction is bad. It's intentionally paced that way. And that's the difference. There are some movies out there that are boring because the director doesn't know what they're doing. But there are movies that are slow because it is intentionally that way. And this movie is like that. And I think not only purposeful, it's for its benefit. And honestly, by the time we get to the town meeting, things are going pretty quick after that. Like, it's only the beginning, really.
Yeah, it's only the beginning that you have to make sure you're immersed to stay engaged.
Just get to that town meeting. I'm telling you, you won't be disappointed.
Yep. All right. Well, we'll see you next week.
Yeah, we're going to be back next week. Like you said, Shogun.
First 2 episodes of Shogun.
Yes, so if you haven't watched it, please do. It is amazing. Highly recommend. And we are going to go full spoilers from the beginning.
I think if you're on the fence about watching it, probably the first couple episodes would be fine to listen to us first if you wanted to do that.
Oh, yeah.
But by the...
Just know some people don't like any spoilers.
Oh, yeah. No, if you don't like any spoilers, definitely go see it now. But if you're like, I'm on the fence, probably just skip when we review the last 2 episodes. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely
no.
Don't
Definitely.
watch those if you haven't seen the show yet. The last 2 episodes. But the rest of it, if you're on the fence, go ahead and listen to us first.
So that last episode, do not listen to if you've not watched it. It is worth it. Yes. Promise me. No, promise. Trust me. That's what I meant to say. It's been too long. I'm messing up words. We need to go.
All right. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.